Ever wondered how knights coordinated massive battles without phones? Did medieval commanders simply yell really loud? How did thousands of armored men know when to charge or retreat across chaotic battlefields? Number 5. The medieval military communications revolution you never knew about. Picture this: you're a medieval commander in charge of thousands of soldiers spread across a sprawling battlefield. There's dust everywhere, men are screaming, horses are charging, and somehow, you need to tell your left flank to move forward while signaling your archers to hold their fire. And you need to do it without a single digital device. Medieval battlefield communication wasn't just important, it was the difference between glorious victory and catastrophic defeat. While we imagine medieval warfare as chaotic free-for-alls, the reality was far more sophisticated. Armies that could effectively communicate movements and commands held a decisive advantage over those that couldn't. The noise of battle was deafening. The clash of weapons, screams of the wounded, and thousands of armored men and horses created an overwhelming din that made simple shouting useless beyond a few feet. Add in the confusion of dust clouds, smoke, and the general chaos of combat, and you've got conditions that would challenge even modern communication systems. Yet despite these challenges, medieval commanders developed remarkably effective methods to control their forces across vast battlefields. From England to Constantinople, battlefield communication systems evolved into complex networks that could transmit crucial information with surprising speed and clarity. Number 4. Horns, drums, and trumpets, the original military ringtones. The medieval battlefield had its own soundtrack, and it wasn't just for dramatic effect. Musical instruments were the medieval equivalent of military radio channels, with different sounds conveying specific commands to troops who knew exactly what each signal meant. Trumpets were perhaps the most recognizable battlefield communication tools. Their piercing sound could cut through the noise of battle, reaching soldiers hundreds of yards away. Different trumpet calls signaled different commands. One pattern might order an advance, another a retreat, and a third could direct cavalry to charge. These weren't simple one-note blasts either. They were distinctive patterns that trained soldiers could instantly recognize. The English longbowmen, famous for their devastating effectiveness at battles like Crécy and Agincourt, responded to specific horn signals that told them when to knock arrows, draw, and loose. Without these clear acoustic signals, their coordinated volleys would have been impossible. Drums served a dual purpose. They communicated commands while also helping troops maintain formation and march in step. Different drum beats conveyed different messages, and drum corps became increasingly sophisticated throughout the medieval period. By the late Middle Ages, complex drumming patterns could convey detailed commands to trained soldiers. Byzantine armies employed a particularly advanced system of musical signals. The Byzantine military manual, known as the Strategikon, described 8 distinct trumpet calls that directed different battlefield maneuvers. These included signals for mounting up, dismounting, advancing, retreating, turning right or left, moving faster, or slowing down. Islamic armies also developed elaborate horn and drum signals. Saladin's forces used specific drum patterns to signal advances, retreats, and formations. The drums themselves were often enormous kettle drums carried on camelback to ensure their sound carried across the largest battlefields. Number 3. Flags, banners, and standards, medieval visual messaging systems. Before radio communications, visual signals dominated battlefields. Medieval armies developed elaborate systems of flags, banners, and standards that conveyed much more than just which side you were on. The commander's standard was the most important visual element on the battlefield. Its location showed troops where the command center was, and its movement could signal major shifts in strategy. If the standard advanced, troops knew to press forward. If it retreated, that signaled a general withdrawal. If it fell, many armies would break and run, believing their leader had fallen. But medieval visual communication went far beyond just following the big flag. Specialized signal flags and banners could convey specific commands to different units. A red pennant raised might tell archers to ready themselves, while a green one could signal cavalry to prepare to charge. Different combinations and movements created a visual language that trained soldiers understood implicitly. Color coding helped troops identify their commanders in the confusion of battle. William the Conqueror's knights at Hastings carried distinctive banners that identified specific nobles, allowing troops to rally to the correct leaders even in dense melees. This system grew increasingly sophisticated, eventually developing into the elaborate heraldic system of the High Middle Ages. Position was crucial too. Banner bearers would stand on elevated ground whenever possible, ensuring maximum visibility. In flat terrain, they might be mounted on horseback or even stand on portable platforms to increase the range of their signals. The Mongols, who conquered the largest contiguous land empire in history, took visual battlefield communication to new heights. Their fast-moving forces operated over enormous distances using standardized flag signals visible from horseback. Different colored flags, patterns, and movements conveyed specific tactical commands to widely dispersed forces, allowing them to coordinate complex maneuvers even when separated by miles. Number 2, messengers, runners, and riders, human communication networks. Despite all their horns and banners, medieval commanders relied heavily on the oldest communication method, sending someone to deliver a message personally. Messengers formed the backbone of battlefield communication, carrying verbal or written orders directly from commanders to subordinate leaders. These weren't just random soldiers told to run somewhere. Professional messengers were elite troops chosen for their intelligence, reliability, and physical fitness. They needed to understand military commands thoroughly, navigate chaotic battlefields, and deliver messages accurately under extreme stress. Many commanders maintained dedicated cadres of messengers who trained specifically for battlefield communication. Knights often served as high-level messengers for critical communications. Their superior armor allowed them to cross dangerous parts of the battlefield, while their status ensured their messages received immediate attention from field commanders. During the Crusades, Knight Templars frequently acted as communication links between different Christian contingents, helping coordinate complex military operations. Speed was crucial, which is why mounted messengers were preferred whenever terrain allowed. A skilled rider on a fast horse could deliver commands to distant units in minutes, allowing commanders to respond quickly to changing battlefield conditions. The Mongols maintained relay stations with fresh horses, enabling messages to travel at unprecedented speeds across their vast empire, a system they also deployed effectively in battle. Successful message delivery in medieval battles wasn't guaranteed. Messengers faced enormous risks, navigating through arrow fire, enemy troops, and general chaos. Smart commanders would send multiple messengers with the same orders via different routes, ensuring at least one would reach the intended recipient. Byzantine armies developed particularly sophisticated messenger systems. The emperor's imperial guard included specialized message bearers who wore distinctive uniforms ensuring instant recognition. These mandators, official messengers, underwent special training in memorization techniques and used a form of military shorthand to convey complex orders accurately. Number 1, secret codes, signals, and surprise, the medieval military intelligence system. Did medieval armies have secret codes? Absolutely. Medieval military communications weren't just about volume and clarity, they also needed security. Commanders developed surprisingly sophisticated methods to prevent enemies from intercepting or understanding their battlefield communications. Simple substitution ciphers were used for written orders, replacing letters with symbols or other letters according to predetermined patterns. These weren't unbreakable by modern standards, but they provided adequate security against battlefield interception. More sophisticated armies, particularly the Byzantines, developed complex encryption methods for sensitive military communications. Visual signals often incorporated security elements too. Banners might be displayed in specific combinations that appeared random to enemies, but conveyed clear messages to friendly forces who knew the system. The Templar Knights developed an elaborate system of banner positions that could communicate dozens of different commands that looked like ordinary standard bearing to uninitiated observers. Acoustic security was achieved through complexity. Rather than single horn blasts that anyone could interpret, sophisticated armies developed intricate sequences of sounds that functioned like audio passwords. Unless you knew exactly what pattern to listen for, these signals would be indistinguishable from general battlefield noise. False signals formed another layer of medieval information warfare. Byzantine commanders were particularly fond of using decoy messengers carrying fake orders, intended to be captured by enemy forces. Meanwhile, the real messengers would take different routes with the actual battle plans. The Vikings were known to use false horn signals to confuse Saxon forces about their intended movements. Some medieval armies maintained backup communication systems specifically for emergencies. When primary communication methods failed, commanders could fall back on prearranged signals that only their closest officers would recognize. These might include unusual flag movements, distinctive torch patterns at night, or even symbolic actions like a commander removing his helmet. The Mongols excelled at secure communications, developing a sophisticated arrow signal system. Specially marked arrows shot high into the air in specific patterns conveyed coded messages visible to distant units but meaningless to enemies who didn't know the system. They also pioneered the use of smoke signals for long-distance daytime communication and fire signals for nighttime operations. Did all these medieval communication methods really work? Yes, with remarkable effectiveness. The battles we remember today, Hastings, Agincourt, Constantinople, were won not just through superior numbers or weaponry, but through communication advantages that allowed commanders to control their forces with precision that would surprise many modern observers. Could you have been a medieval signal officer? Would you have recognized the horn blast that meant retreat or the flag pattern signaling advance? As we marvel at our instant digital communications today, perhaps we should spare a thought for the medieval commanders who mastered the art of battlefield communication with nothing more than flags, horns, and messengers on horseback. What forgotten communication techniques might still have relevance in today's world if modern systems were to fail?